In collaboration with the Alameda County Bar Association, this is Love Thy Lawyer, where we talk with members of the ACBA about their lives and legal careers. I'm Louis Goodman, the host of the LTL podcast, and yes, I'm a member of the Alameda County Bar Association. Shay Gilmore has worked the big firm. He's practiced insurance defense. He now has his own practice involving regulatory compliance, corporate governance, licensing, commercial contracts, and all other aspects of business law, advice, and transactions. But what makes Shay's practice fascinating is that it all revolves around the cannabis industry. He is a top 20 Daily Journal cannabis lawyer. He is a super lawyer. He's served on the Jenny Commission. He's been involved in continuing legal education. He's published articles in the legal cannabis space. And, of course, he's a member of the Alameda County Bar Association. Shay Gilmore, welcome to the Alameda County Bar Association and the Love Thy Lawyer podcast.
Thank you, Louis, for having me. I'm very pleased to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. I really am interested in talking to you about your practice and the type of practice because it is a little unusual. Where are you speaking to us from right now?
I'm here in San Francisco, California, where I have my own law practice. It's just me as a solo practitioner, and I've been in business as a solo since California adopted adult use cannabis on January 1st, 2018.
What type of practice do you have? Can you describe it? I mean, I set it up in the intro a little bit, but how do you describe it?
Sure. Yeah, it's pretty much exactly like you described. It's a corporate, commercial, regulatory, business transaction focused practice with the kind of, I guess, distinguishing factor of all of my clients are either operators in the cannabis space or investors in this space. So it really is kind of like a way of taking a general business practice, but really specifically targeting I consider to be like a movement for the expansion of access to this plant.
How long have you been doing that specific type of practice?
So specifically to cannabis, it's been since January 1st, 2018, when I opened my own practice. I had previously worked as in-house counsel on mergers and acquisitions and other business transactional matters. So had already some exposure, particularly from like the business side, to kind of what these legal deals, were made up of and the kind of processes and approaches that were really effective and really adapted kind of what I'd learned in a more traditional general counsel setting to the cannabis industry and movement.
Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Texas.
Yeah, whereabouts in Texas?
I grew up in Corpus Christi, Texas, and I went to a college in Houston and law school at the University of Texas at Austin.
What college did you go to in Texas?
Well, I went to Rice University for undergrad, but when you ask what college, I thought you were being very specific, and you might be, I don't know, but I was at Jones College at Rice when I was an undergrad.
And is there something that Jones specializes in as opposed to anything else?
No, Rice has a residential college system where you're randomly, unless you're a legacy, assigned to, one of, I think there are now 10 undergraduate residential colleges where your meals and, gather, college related functions. And it's a way of like taking the university experience and kind of like really shrinking it down to a smaller section of it. And each college is named after, somebody that gave a bunch of money at some point. And my college was Mary Gibbs Jones College. She was the wife of Jesse Jones, who was a major oil man in Texas for a long time.
Well, maybe there'll be a Gilmore College at Rice one of these days.
Sure. I mean, Lord knows I've given him enough money already.
Well, how was that experience at Rice? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, my best friends in life really were made there. I've had, lots of opportunity to grow, both my law practice as an alum of the university and as well as, the friendships that I made there. I consider it small, right? It's not a very big school, but it really does punch above its weight and attracts a real diversity of talent that I feel very, privileged to been a part of and continue to be a part of.
Then you went to law school where?
At UT and in Austin.
In Austin. Okay. Did you take any time off between college and law school?
No, I didn't. And I recommend people do if anyone's interested in going to law school and they haven't already.
Why?
I think that it was my impression that the more mature, the more reflective, and I better kind of emotionally equipped to handle law school were those that had actually taken time between undergrad. I mean, 25 years old, you're still, still kind of a child, really. I think your brain doesn't even really start fully developing or doesn't even end, I guess, its full development until your mid-20s. So it was my experience in law school that the more mature, level-headed students were those that had taken some time.
Yeah, I agree. I took a little bit of time between college and law school, but the people who really were good law students had taken a few years. Well, that brings up the question, when did you first decide that you wanted to be a lawyer?
My mom worked at a law firm in Corpus Christi as a office manager and paralegal. And so I've been around lawyers growing up just from folks that she knew from work. And I'd always kind of looked at it as something that I knew I could do and would, be good at. I didn't really make a formal decision, I guess, until I decided to go to law school, which was in 98. And then, kind of from there, I did come close to not being a lawyer. I guess I was so nerve-wracked in that California bar exam. I had studied so hard and, it doesn't have a very high pass rate. And, I was coming from Texas and kind of felt like I was fighting with two arms tied behind my back. And I really, at the end of studying for that test, at the end of taking it, I just said, I don't care if I pass or not. I'm never taking this test again. I couldn't take it anymore. And I said, if I don't pass, I'm just going to find something else to do. I won't be able to practice law. Okay. So we'll figure something else out. Well, I passed and became a lawyer after that.
What was it that prompted you to take the California bar as opposed to the Texas bar or one of the other 49 bars that are available?
Right. Well, it actually came from a conversation I had with a woman who was she was in the administration at the law school in the career counseling, section of the law school's administration. She and I, it wasn't a formal meeting, but she and I were just kind of out at a, law school function, probably, sponsored by some law firm in town. And I said to her, I'm really interested in moving to California at some point. Maybe I'll work here, in Austin for a few years and, and then move. And she said, get out of here. She said, go now. What are you waiting for? You don't have to be a Texas lawyer to be a California lawyer. You want to go practice in California? Go do that. And so I think that I'd always kind of seen myself not really spending my adult life in Texas. I spent 25 years there. I knew it and I'd done it. And I was really that conversation that got me on the move out west.
Can you give us a brief history of your legal career from graduating and passing the bar and then going into let's call it traditional business law world to where you are and what you're doing now?
Sure. Yeah. So right after I graduated from law school, I worked for Lewis Brisbois, which is a large California, well, I guess now they're all over the country law firm. I did work for a commercial litigation team in that office in Los Angeles. Their main client was one of these, it was an insurance subsidiary of AIG. They actually, I liked one of the cases I remember on there. It's kind of fun, insured the James Bond franchise. And so I got to see like an actual handwritten note from Sean Connery.
Cool.
Dated, like 1960 or whatever. That was in Los Angeles. From there, I moved to San Francisco and I worked for a law firm that has now, absorbed into Duane Morris. And then from there, I worked at another law firm that has now been absorbed into Squire Patton Boggs, which I think itself was Squire Sanders and also Patton Boggs. There's a lot of mergers in the legal services space over the last few years. I got hired by the client out of that job to go work in the general counsel's office of a subsidiary of Allianz, and then also worked for another a professional liability insurer here in San Francisco until I opened my own practice in January 2018.
And what prompted that?
Well, it was really like specifically, I had a conversation with my husband. And we had just, watched, I think as everyone had, the Prop 64, which Californians passed in November 2016, about to turn into law. And I think that, I've always had an interest in this space, but just had not done any of the actual legal work at that point in time. So, I've been very good friends with a colleague and friend of mine for a long time, who's a partner at Farella in San Francisco. And he founded their cannabis industry practice. And I took him out for drinks and I said, well, Ryan, I'm really interested. And I think this was like 2017. And I said, but I don't know if I might be too late. And he said, too late? What are you talking about? We haven't even written the regulations yet. There's no law here. This is exactly when, lawyers want to get involved. And at that point in my career, I'd done litigation, I'd done transactions, I'd done some government relations work. I kind of felt like I had enough kind of legal chops to be a general counsel and advisor to companies. And because of the specific regulatory focus of this law practice and the evolving nature of those regulations, I had a way to get up to speed really quickly because I was basically learning it just like everybody else was at the time the regulations were being written.
Is there anything about cannabis as such and the cannabis industry as such that really attracted you to it as someone who wanted to be on the cutting edge of the cannabis world?
Well, I think several things. I think, there's a whole medicinal and health aspect to the product that is, not well researched enough, that doesn't enjoy the kind of federal support that other industries in this country certainly do. And I think that there's opportunity there for, lawyers to engage, with the lawmakers, with the regulators, and to, really, there's a whole, like I say, a whole scientific medicinal aspect there. But for me, I've really been motivated by the social justice angle of this movement. This is, what we're witnessed in this country is it's not normal at all. And it is, a real embarrassment, I think, to us as a country, and a sure embarrassment, really like kind of heartbreaking embarrassment to us as lawyers, that we've allowed, the kind of just unimaginably unfair, disproportionate incarceration and prosecution rates of people of color in this country at the hands of, Nancy Reagan fanatical, just say no weirdos. And, we've really got to get a handle on this. We're talking about a plant that, according to the the Centers of Disease Control has resulted in exactly 0 deaths from ingestion ever. So we've lost kind of like a real opportunity to be focused on the science. And because of the kind of racial inflection of the prohibition movement in this country, really, I think, subjected ourselves to a tremendous amount of shame.
What do you really like about practicing law?
I enjoy the relationships. I really, ever since I started practicing law, I have really enjoyed building through experience and through service a connection with my clients, with my colleagues, with other, friends in legal work that I do, either for nonprofit and for others. I really like the relationships that I've built.
If a young person were just graduating from college, thinking about a career, would you recommend the law?
Yeah. I think, no matter what you're interested in coming out of college, there's a legal service application right there. If you are interested in aviation and you're a pilot, well, I've got a good friend who's the deputy general counsel of Alaska Airlines, right? I think if you're interested in, communications, there are real legal issues to tackle there around the First Amendment and whatever. I think that if you're interested in, courtrooms and kind of like the life of a trial and the kind of excitement that goes with that, certainly legal education can get you prepared.
How is actually practicing law met or different from your expectations about it?
I think that I overestimated how different it would be than kind of life pre. I think before I started practicing, I had kind of a mystified idea about the practice, and that there were some kind of like, scroll of legal Latin incantations that you were to recite as, to make magic happen. And really what I've come to understand in law practice, there is no magic. There's just the law. There's just, what happened or what didn't. And there's just reasonable people engaged in looking at all of these events and trying to make the most sense out of them.
What about the business of practicing law, and how's that gone for you since you started your own practice? And what sort of tips or suggestions could you give to people who are starting out in going into practice out of a big firm?
Yes, I'm not in my 5th year of practice. It is, it's grown every year. So, but some years it's grown like more than others. And I think it's really kind of tracked the larger economy for legal services. I'm a solo practitioner and kind of along for the ride, really, as the economy moves, so will my clients and then so will I. Now, I think for tips for getting clients, when I first got this idea that I'd do this when I was still in-house, and I talked to my mom about it, her first question was, do you think you can get clients? And I said, yeah. I think I can. And I think tips are really on, things around being very open to potential opportunities. You may not see directly in front of you a client, but you may see someone who knows one. And I'll give an example. I had a friend from yoga class that ended up being best friends with a cannabis manufacturer in Humboldt County, who then became the general counsel for her company. And then, from her developed other relationships. She's very well connected in the cannabis community there in Humboldt. So I think, don't ever, kind of arrogantly presume that what opportunity may lie out there, and to be very open to it. And I think, also to, just, really think about what it is that interests you. If you're not interested in the work or the kind of legal environment that you're practicing in, it's really gonna, I guess it's hard to hide that from potential business partners and clients. And so really, I think conveying your interest is going to be key to developing more business.
Is there anything that you know now that you really wished you knew before you started your own practice?
I think I wish that I think I was too nervous about it. I think that I wish I would have known that it was going to be okay.
Uh-huh.
I think that at the beginning of it, I was, kind of more preoccupied with kind of, reflecting success or, achieving or, whatever. And really I've kind of just through experience with the clients and with the legal community over time, really let go of that and really used that opportunity to kind of deepen my expertise and real passion for this space.
Do you think the legal system's fair?
No, it's absolutely not. I mean, life is not fair, and legal system is just as good as the, kind of flawed, foundations that it rests on. And quite frankly, just as flawed as, some of these appointees. I mean, you can go ask the 11th Circuit about how they feel about District Judge Eileen Cannon and how good a job she's doing. We're not living in a system that's fair. And that said, do I think that there are ideals that are absolutely, founded on fairness? Absolutely. And I think that, United States system may not be the best that ever, has ever been or will be, but it is the best in the world. And I think we have something to be proud of in this country and in this state. Our state in particular is a model internationally. Like you mentioned, I served on the Judicial Nominees Evaluation Commission for the state bar. And, we've had, the EU government and, governments around the world kind of copy, what we've done in California around that. So is it fair? No way. But is that any reason to stop believing in the ideals of fairness? No, it's no reason.
Going to shift gears here a little bit, Shay. What do you like to do to get your mind off of practicing law? What do you do in your own time?
I practice a lot of yoga. I practiced this morning. I practice pretty much every day. I love the just kind of time that I get to focus on just breathing and being present and, doing that with a bunch of other people who are, kind of similarly focused at the same time. It can be really invigorating.
How do you define success?
I think that I would define it as doing a good job for the right reason.
Let's say you came into some real money, $3 or $4 billion. What, if anything, would you do differently in your life?
Well, is that even real money right now? I mean, like just 3 or 4 billion. I mean, come on. Well, I would not go buy a social media platform and overpay for it and then run it into the ground. I think
you'd need a lot more money than 3 or 4 billion to do that.
Not as much, right? Yeah, to do something as inspired as that. So I think that I'm really interested in, dismantling a lot of the kind of structural inequality that I've just seen in my life growing up in Texas, for sure, but, as I've learned over my law practice, here in California. And, I think that if I had $3 or $4 billion, I would think about working with nonprofits that were really interested in kind of, strategically, politically dismantling a lot of the institutional bias that we see that results in just this really heartbreaking inequality.
What keeps you up at night?
Well, I do get nervous about my clients and whether they're smart enough to take my advice. I
think that keeps all of us up.
Yeah, I mean, I can beg, I can tell them the rule, I can beg them to follow it. I can, give them 80 different reasons why it's a good idea and all the, bad consequences that can flow from not following that advice. But you cannot make that horse drink water. You can just do the best you can to lead them there. And still, I think the, kind of other side of recognizing that you cannot make that horse drink is that you will sometimes be up worrying if that horse is going to fall over from dehydration.
Yeah, my dad practiced law for over 50 years, and he once said, Lou, you can give clients advice, but you can't make them take it.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, I think that that's something that it's very different from being an associate, where you're responsible to another lawyer who's a partner, who's kind of making the call, versus being, in this role and where I was when I was in-house, I'd be talking to people who didn't really have time to care about, anything that, I thought was, I guess, of value, to, the law firm culture, like, prestige of the law school or the types of cases that I was working on. All they saw was a lawyer who could answer their legal question right now so they could move on, with their day. And so you really didn't have much, and sometimes they took your advice and sometimes they didn't, right? So you because they were just coming for an answer most of the time, they were smart and they took it. But one of the things that I had to really kind of understand was I am not the business. I don't run a business selling cannabis or investing in cannabis, but I sure can tell you what the law says about those things.
Let's say you had a magic wand. There was one thing in the world that you could change, the legal world or otherwise. What would that be?
Well, I think I would like the world and the legal world in general to exhibit far more compassion than exists right now. I think that there's a lot of opportunity that's missed in the legal profession and the greater world for seeing yourself in the other. And I if I could wave a magic wand, I'd change all that right away.
What's the best way for someone to get in touch with you if they would like to talk to you about your legal services?
You bet. The best way is through my website, and that is www.shaygilmorelaw.com. And I'll say it more slowly so it's more digestible. www.shaygilmorelaw.com.
Great. Let's start with Alan Borelli. I see you on the call, and you had some questions in the chat. Alan Borelli, what's your question or comment for Shay?
I put the question in the chat just about the chances of the federal government legalizing it, and also like timeline. The Safe Banking Act is not in the defense bill.
If I may, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Alan, your question is, what do you think the chances are for federal legalization of cannabis? And what about the federal regulations with respect to banking and how that affects the cannabis business?
Right. And I think Alan's asking about a timeline, which is, of course, like the, $24 billion question, or that I've been hearing. I've been in this space now for 5 years. So it's just 5 years away. Well, time's up. It should be here by now. I think that you named it. The most promising piece of federal, not legalization, but progress in this space would be the Safe Banking Act. But it doesn't look like, this year it's going to happen, which is just another year of missed opportunity. Now, I will say you got this year, for the first time, the federal government has expanded access to cannabis for research. That's the first time that's happened. So it's, And you also had two more states come online as the result of these November elections. Missouri came online and Maryland. And look, Arkansas wasn't that far off. All right. So, we're in a space where we can talk about Arkansas, and it's not like, a pipe dream, because it's going to happen.
Joanne Kingston, you signed into the chat. Do you have a question or a comment for Shay?
You were speaking about racial inequities. Can you be more specific about where and when you have encountered that? Is that in other states? And is this related to cases in states where cannabis has not become legal?
Yes. I think that where I've encountered it in my law practice has been only here in California, in the commercial cannabis industry, where it is still evolving. 100% there is a racial component to the amount of economic opportunity, to the amount of success in the media environment with cannabis that is tied to race and is an embarrassment.
Are you talking about the ability to open a club and have a commercial business?
Yes,
and
absolutely
get the
right.
to do it?
Oh, yes. If you are white and male in this space, you have access to capital that other demographic groups can only dream of achieving.
Where does that capital come from?
It comes from other white people. Right? It's not like the black people are over here handing out, it's kind of obvious, right? And, specifically, you're talking about, small private equity groups. You now see cannabis companies that are publicly traded on the Canadian Stock Exchange. So now you've got retail investment money. Again, these are white people that have money to invest in the retail, securities market.
I'd like to give you one more opportunity to chime in with anything that you think you'd like to say that you haven't had a chance to so far.
No, I think you have given me so much time. I apologize if I've gone on and on about this stuff, but I really am interested in it and really enjoy working to expand access to cannabis throughout California.
Shay Gilmore, thank you so much for joining us today on the Love Thy Lawyer podcast and the Alameda County Bar Association podcast. And I want to thank Joanne Kingston and Alan Borelli for joining us today as well, and Kaylin Dalen for running the program. Thank you very much. That's it for today's edition of Love Thy Lawyer in collaboration with the Alameda County Bar Association. Please visit the lovethylawyer.com website, where you can find links to all of our episodes. Also, please visit the Alameda County Bar Association website at acbanet.org, where you can find more information about our support of the legal profession, promoting excellence in the legal profession, and facilitating equal access to justice. Special thanks to ACBA President Pamela Ross and Criminal Justice Chair Annie Bellis. Staff members Kaylin Dalen, Saeed Randall, Valerie Brown Lestroart, and Hadassah Hayashi. Thanks to Joel Katz for music, Brian Matheson for technical support, Paul Roberts for social media, and Tracy Harvey. I'm Louis Goodman.
I think that, yeah. I really didn't have any kind of agenda item